Today's topic that I wanted to cover off is around manual bidding. And it's something which some people are scared of, some people absolutely love, some people over rely on, some people don't use enough. And I don't know where you guys are on that as far as manual bidding goes. But over the last week, and partly to prep us for Black Friday to test scaling strategies out, I've been testing manual bid on my own e-commerce store, which we just use for testing. It's not really set up to properly optimize and profit and things like that. At some point, we will get it set up properly. But in the last week in particular, we've been testing on and off on this store. I'm going to show you how we've set up our manual bid campaigns and some of the results that have come through as well. And really over the last 7 days, I wanted to get this done mainly for a recap of how manual bid is actually performing, what's working, and maybe what needs a bit more work. Because the thing is, the auction changes so often that I just like to keep touch with what's working and what's not. I do this with all my strategies, but right now it makes sense to do that with manual bid. Now, manual bid is something which I use when I need it, as opposed to it being an always on strategy. When I do need it is, for example, when I want to do fast scaling, or if there's high competition, or maybe the account doesn't feel as strong as it needs to be in terms of the bid times estimated action rate plus user value algorithm of how Facebook looks at the auction. So manual bid, what that essentially does is it overrides Facebook's own bid when it comes to your ad and your audience and the ad being served. And what you're doing is overriding what Facebook thinks you should be scoring at. And sometimes it works in your favor when done right as well. Sometimes it also doesn't as well. And it's really important to understand why that is and kind of what to do about trying to get it right as well. Now, when I look at Black Friday and I look at what the fastest ways of scaling up, manual bidding is definitely one of them. Accelerated delivery plus manual bidding is probably the fastest, but the old strategies still do work. So duplicating a campaign, higher budget, etc. All the strategies come with risks, and I think the thing about this is, how am I going to carry that risk, and what am I prepared to do to make sure that this actually works, and what the controls that I need to be putting in place to make sure they are working as well. So I'll show you kind of how I've gone about setting this up and testing it over the last 7 days, hopefully to give you some ideas on how you can take away manual bid as well. And then also the kind of key areas of the BPM method where you can go back in and look at our structure for manual bid and come back with any questions you have as well. So hopefully that's going to be quite interesting for you guys as well. So let me just share my screen. So hopefully you can see the ad account there. So this is a jewelry niche website that we've been operating ourselves over the last kind of year or so, on and off, just to test different strategies. So even going something as simple as account calibration, we'll go and test it here, or testing instant collection ads, or testing different funnels. But right now I'm doing it to test, in particular, manual bid for one of our products. And what I've been doing over the last 7 days is testing the cost cap versus bid cap strategy and trying to get to a position where I can really push some good spend behind it to actually see how it's performing. Now, I tested bid cap and cost cap, and also tested ROAS bidding. So some of you will have used ROAS bidding with varying results, but I'll share some interesting findings from that anyway, and kind of get your view on how that kind of looks for you guys as well. So the first one here is I've taken a stacked lookalike, a super lookalike. So this is 1%, 2%, and 3% lookalikes that have been working well, stack them into a single ad set, and then I put some bids behind them to see how Facebook would react with the different bid levels. Now, bear in mind, an ideal cost per acquisition for this account, somewhere about $60, $70, probably max cost per acquisition, because our AOVs, considering down the funnel, this is just top of the funnel, mean that we can profit, and we've got back end stuff as well. So when I went in with a bid strategy, our ideal CPA, like our perfect CPA, is $30. We don't really get that, especially as it gets more expensive. So when I started my bidding strategy, I did 3x my CPA goal, and then I added a bit more on top of that, because I want to test a range. And as you can see here, I also had a 60, also had a 30. I think I ran them previously, just had no traffic. So over the last 7 days, I focused on these bid levels here. Now, what's quite interesting is when you do a bid in the auction, when you're using bid cap, you're bidding on winning that auction. When you're doing cost cap, you're bidding on not just winning the right auction, but also getting the right cost. They're two different things as part of the same family. But one thing I want you to understand is there's only one true manual bid, and it is using bid cap. Because with bid cap, you say to Facebook, this is the absolute amount that I want to bid. When you use cost cap or target cost or min ROAS, you're still letting Facebook decide the bid. You're just giving a parameter. So with the parameter of cost cap, you say, my CPA, I want a $50 CPA. Facebook decides on the bid and everything else around it. But interestingly, what I found interesting over this test was on the $100 bid test, I got a cost per purchase of $45, which is okay. Then on the 110, I got a cost per purchase of 51. But look at the average order values. Look at the difference here. Now, our order values are from $50 up to $300. So the range is somewhere in between that. And consistently, we were getting better AOVs at the higher bid. And this is something I want you to take away, because the bid level doesn't just tell you are you going to win the auction, it also gives you potential access to better value customers as well. So here, if I look at my CPMs, generally the CPMs are the same. Often I'd see the higher bid attracting the higher CPM, so that's fine. The conversion rate from click to purchase was actually better at the $100 bid. So if all I was interested in was CPA, then actually the $100 bid would have been okay for me. But for this, I'm looking at return on ad spend. So the $110 bid is working best for you. Now, you might look at this and say, well, why don't you just bid $110 and have it done with? The problem is that every day the auction changes. If all I did was went in every single day with a $110 bid, I might not have the best bid every single day. And the best bid means you win the auctions at the best price. So if I could get a 1.88 ROAS from this every single day, that's all I would run. But the reason I didn't run that is because some days that 110 bid was too expensive. So for example, the CPM went up, and maybe it's down to the competition. So what I do is I run these 3 bids at the start of the day. I track the performance, and then I pause the one that I don't think is going to give me the performance I need. So for example, you can see this $90 bid has been paused out. It hasn't been performing well. We'll give it another chance again, and chances are it will get paused out again. One of your questions might and should be, is this all good? Making changes in the campaign and doing it frequently. I am using CBO, so obviously making a change in the CBO does impact the CBO itself, but in practice, it doesn't seem to have a negative impact. If you don't want to pause it, you can always go and set a max spend. That seems to have, that doesn't seem to impact the learning phase. If you're worried about the learning phase, I'm not. I just wanted to do some quick testing, so I just paused it out. And then as you can see, I've got these two, I've got significant spend behind them to give me enough results. So I'm not saying this is big spend, but it's enough data to tell me that the 110 bid is good. So that's in terms of that kind of for the bid cap. Then let's have a look at the next one down. For cost cap, it was really interesting. So with cost cap, when I launched it, the first day it was performing extremely well. Now I've actually paused it out because in this week, the cost cap hasn't been performing as strongly as the bid cap. So with the cost cap for this particular campaign, I've gone to, so when you set a cost cap, you're supposed to tell Facebook what your maximum CPA is, because cost cap on purchase event, the CPA is kind of against the purchases. If you're optimizing for add to cart or initiate checkout, your cost cap is against that event. So for this one, I've gone for a range based on my ideal CPA all the way up to a kind of really a max CPA. And interestingly, the cost per purchase generally comes out close to what your target is. The problem with this is that Facebook's only focusing on, or at least it seems to be, the CPA. Now, if you're running a website, an ecom store, product service, whatever it is, and you have one fixed price and AOV doesn't change, then I would say that cost cap is a better strategy, because all Facebook is doing is to maximize your return for that cost per acquisition. So if, for example, this store just had one price, $100, $150, whatever, and I went in at a cost cap, then actually it would work out pretty well. But right now, I'm after ROAS. That's the most important thing for me, and therefore this didn't actually work out. So that's just one example of using cost cap where it's not actually working out in your favor. So I had two bid caps, one on, I think this one was broad. So this one was on broad as well. This one also kind of, I think it was a similar bid level. So again, 110 on broad as well as my lookalikes. Right now, lookalikes are working better. So we're kind of pushing more in there. So that's to give you an idea of the kind of setup for what we did there. Now, interestingly, with minimum ROAS, so this particular campaign, same account, we actually set this up against minimum ROAS. Now, when I set this up, it wasn't actually spending for the first few days. So I've got a few different ranges here. Let me just expand that out. Now, minimum ROAS for this part, I'm aiming for a kind of 1.2, maybe a 1.8. But when I actually tried testing, first of all, I had 1.2, 1.8, and I think I had also a 2.5. The 2.5 ROAS wasn't spending. What Facebook was saying is, I can't get you a 2.5 ROAS here, and that's fine. The 1.2, which I gave Facebook a bit more of a remit to find more purchasers, was actually massively underperforming. So even though I said to Facebook, I'm willing to go for a lower ROAS, it didn't quite work out. So the 1.8 ROAS is the one that actually got the most spend and therefore brought in the sales. And I can look at the data, and some interesting things happened here. Now, when I first launched this 1.8 ROAS campaign, I was getting a 2.5 to 3 ROAS in the week. But gradually over time, the ROAS actually dropped down to 1.8. So you didn't wonder like what's going on there. Facebook is looking at averages here. So Facebook is saying, right, you want a minimum ROAS of 1.8. That's what we're going to aim for. If we're getting a 2, 2.5, then we'll speculate with broader audiences. If we're getting a low ROAS, then we'll try and give you the best users. And it's trying to balance that all out. But interestingly, the click to conversion rate for this particular campaign and the cost per purchase were really good. The AOV is actually lower than what we're getting in some of our campaigns. So we're getting $65, $67. At the moment, it doesn't feel like min ROAS is actually giving me what I want and what I expect. So for something like this, where I'm getting the cost per purchase right down to $37, a good CPM, not so good cost per click. So the CTR is not as strong as it needs to be. So it's 0.74 on the CTR. But this is showing promise. And for this one here, we just launched up today and it will, I think it's gone live or going live, a 2.2, and we'll test different ROAS ranges as well. I think we've got another 1.6 we'll launch as well, trying to find the best boundary. Now, one of the strategies I looked at a few years ago was to use dynamic bidding. And that's actually something which Facebook has tried to encourage people to test. Is in the day, if you set a 1.8 ROAS, for example, and you're not getting the performance you need, then reduce it down or increase it accordingly. So going back to the bid levels again and showing the campaign that was working, if you follow Facebook's advice, what you're supposed to do is not have multiple bids against each other, because there will be an overlap. What you're supposed to do is run one bid and then manage the bid based on performance. So, you're getting good performance at 110, great. Getting bad performance, maybe drop it down. You want more traffic, increase it. So you're balancing quality of traffic versus volume. So this is one of the things when it comes to kind of fast scaling and Black Friday, is to get the right bid level. Then obviously you can duplicate it at the same bid level if you want to access more, or you push more budget in a combination of both. Budget management is far riskier with bid cap than it was with cost cap, because cost cap, Facebook's trying to balance your spend and performance, but with bid cap, you're basically overriding the auction and trying to access better customers. And you can see here, the conversion rate for the same period is lower, and therefore my CPA is higher, but I'm getting access to customers that are probably more likely to spend more money. And that's the only reason this is working better than me and ROAS right now. So ultimately, you want to get the right balance between all these strategies. But this is how I go through the exercise of testing to find the right bid levels. Because what I want to do is when I go into a period of heavy scaling, i.e. Black Friday, I want to know what all the parameters are before I get there. Because you don't want to do this testing on the Friday, on the weekend, etc. And that's why I wanted to raise that with you guys now, because if you are looking at manual bid ahead of Black Friday, for Black Friday, now's the time to do that testing. Now's the time to see what bid strategy works but well, which audiences the bid strategies work well. So, I've tested a 1 to 3% lookalike versus abroad. There are main audiences, as well as kind of interests as well. And I want to see where that works best so I can have the best strategies in my pocket ahead of scaling as well. And what I would say is the M scale section of the BPM method in scaling strategies, what we've done is to break those different strategies down based on what's in the cookbook. So the cookbook is a subset of the BPM method, but we've pulled out the actual step-by-step sections based on how we kind of set these up. So if you are looking to do some manual bid, I'd encourage you to have a look at the training, have a look back at this video, come up with the ideas, post in the group, turn up to the Q&A calls if you need to get more direct feedback, but give it a go. Because, when you come into the period where there are so many shoppers in the market, there's so much more competition. If you just go in at auto bid, you're letting Facebook decide your fate. That can be a problem for scaling. But at the same time, if you don't have confidence with manual bid, if you haven't tested it out and you don't know what the boundaries are, you're going to make it harder for yourself as well. So